Since the early 1990s, Coach Joe has hired a lot of young and up-and-coming drivers. There are very successful Joe Gibbs Racing drivers that have made a name for themselves when they started their careers on Joe Gibbs Racing, like Tony Stewart, Denny Hamlin, and Christopher Bell. We got to see successful drivers in Joe Gibbs Racing accomplish a lot, like Dale Jarrett, Bobby Labonte, Kyle Busch, Carl Edwards, Martin Truex Jr., and Matt Kenseth. We got future stars in Gibbs like Ty Gibbs and Sammy Smith, if Sammy does not leave the Toyota Racing Development team. And some not so good drivers in Gibbs like Joey Logano. Thankfully, he has made a name for himself in Team Penske, Eric Jones and Daniel Suarez, and thankfully they're doing a lot better in their current teams. And some not the best Joe Gibbs Racing teams like J.G. Yaley, Riley Herbs, and Drew Dollar. There are some Joe Gibbs Racing drivers that were young and forgotten about, such as Brad Coleman and Kyle Benjamin. Kyle, I miss you so much. But at least they get talked about sometimes in the NASCAR motorsports community. However, there's one driver that drove for Joe Gibbs Racing when he was young, but he is extremely forgotten. His name is Marc Davis. Chances are, even if you watched NASCAR in the late 2000s, you forgot about him until this video was uploaded, but that's okay. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Marc Davis. This is Marc Davis, Joe Gibbs Racing's forgotten developmental driver. Marc Davis was born on June 23, 1990 from Silver Spring, Maryland. Growing up, Davis was the son of an F1 boat racer. Marc began racing in BMX, achieving US 2 Gold Cup #1 rankings. At the age of 8, Davis would move up to quarter midgets and junior dragsters. He's also spent 3 years racing in Bandaloras before moving up to legend cars. At the age of 13, he was in his third year racing Legends cars and won 2002 National Legends Car Championships in the dirt and road course young line divisions, which meant Marc Davis became the first champion to win both championships in the same season. At the age of 15, Marc Davis won the 2005 NASCAR Road Course Points Championship in the Super Unlimited division and decided to add team ownership. While he was 15, Marc Davis owned the Florida Fast Kids Fast Trucks Team Series and lived in a late model team at South Boston Speedway. This is when he was a sophomore at James Hubbard Blake High School in Silver Spring, Maryland. So, right off the gate, it was looking like Marc Davis was going to have an amazing future in the racing world. In 2006, Marc Davis moved to Mooresville, North Carolina to further his racing career and reach his goal to be in NASCAR. Joe Gibbs Racing hired Marc Davis to race some late model races at Hickory Motor Speedway. On March 25, 2006, Marc Davis would become the second black driver to win at Hickory. Davis would win 6 of the 12 races that year. In 2007, Marc Davis would race full-time in the NASCAR Busch Series East Series. His best finish would be a third at Nashville and Adirondack. His stats for the 2007 season was 0 wins, 4 top 5s, and 6 top 10s, 4 DNFs, an average finish of 13.3, and he finished 9th in points. For a Joe Gibbs driver, that is mediocre. Meanwhile, his teammate Joey Logano would win the 2007 NASCAR Busch East Series Championship. Davis also did 3 West Series races. His best finish was a second at Phoenix. Davis would make his ARCA REMAX Series debut for Vanity Motorsports and would finish in 4th, after starting in 5th. 2007 was a decent and struggling year for a rookie like Marc that is trying to get his feet wet and get a taste of racing a heavy stock car. In 2008, Marc Davis would make his very first NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut at Gateway, racing in a number 81 Randy Moss Motorsports Chevy. Davis would start 12th and finish 16th on the lap, which is a pretty solid run for a driver who got a taste of truck racing. Marc once again competed at the NASCAR Camping World East Series, and it was a much better season. Despite being winless, his season was a lot better compared to 2007. His stats are once again 0 wins and 4 top 5s, but he had 7 top 10s, 1 DNF, and an average finish of 10.5 and finished 5th in points. Marc was about to get his first win at Dover until Eric Almirola passed him late in the race. Marc Davis also competed in 1 West race at Phoenix. His race was looking promising since he started second and led 45 laps. Unfortunately, for I'm not sure what reason, Marc Davis would finish 17th, 2 laps down. Later in 2008, Marc Davis would make his NASCAR Nationwide Series debut at Memphis, racing in a number 18 DLP HD TV Toyota Joe Gibbs Racing car. Marc started in 4th place, but would unfortunately finish 23rd, 4 laps down. After Memphis, that would be his last time Marc Davis would race for the coach. From what I researched, his father said that it was due to lack of sponsors. For the remainder of 2008 NASCAR Nationwide Series season, Marc Davis would race for Armando Fitz in number 22 Supercuts Dodge car. After 2008, his days of racing for Joe Gibbs Racing were done at the Memphis. For the remainder of his NASCAR career, he would bounce on different race teams between 2009 through 2011 on the Trucks and Nationwide Series. In 2009, Harry Davis, his father, would make his own team called Marc Davis Motorsports in the Trucks and Nationwide Series so Marc could continue his racing career, but the goal was to be in the Cup Series. His last truck race would be at Homestead. Unfortunately, he crashed out after 65 laps. Marc Davis Motorsports competed in 2 Nationwide Series races at the Spring, Bristol, and Richmond races, finishing 27th to 29th. Marc's highlight of 2009 was a bad moment, unfortunately. During the 2009 NASCAR race, Brendan Gaughan was going to make a stop while Marc Davis was going to his garage. Davis made a boneheaded move by turning into the garage while Brendan Gaughan was going to his pit box. Justified reaction, Brendan Gaughan was furious on the radio.
Find me that dumb wannabe college graduate. Do not let him leave this racetrack at all. I'm fine. No, I'm talking about the kid. He's not leaving this track till he sees me.
After that moment, that would have been the end of it. Unfortunately, that was not the case. After Marc DNF, Brendan Gaughan's crew chief, Brian Barry, went to Marc's garage, leaned into Marc's car window, yelling at him, and was allegedly yelling racial slurs at Marc Davis. At least 2 people reported to NASCAR about the situation. Unfortunately, that was not the first time that Marc had to deal with racism. During the Hickory racing days, fans of Hickory were chanting, "N-word go home, N-word go home." ESPN.com's Ed Hinton said on the article that the Nashville situation was worse than Hickory and ugly. After Nashville, Barry was suspended for 5 races and returned for the Chicagoland race. The last time Brian Barry was crew chief was in the NASCAR Xfinity Series for Ryan Vargas in the 2020 season finale race at Phoenix. As for Marc, he would make 2 more races in the Nationwide Series at the 2010 Dover Fall race and the 2011 Nashville Summer race for Robert Richardson Jr. in the 23 and the number 03. In 3 starts for the Truck Series, Marc's average finish was a 22.0. In 10 starts for the Nationwide Series, his average finish was a 28.8 and only DNQ'd twice. Just like that, Marc's NASCAR career was over. Nowadays, and I could be wrong, public sources like Wikipedia says that he works for Hendrick BMW in North Carolina. I could be wrong. I also assume that, according to his social media, he works for Alex Bowman Racing. I could be wrong, and I apologize if I am. All I know is that he still does attend races and is also a car enthusiast. Y'all can follow his social media account if y'all want. If anybody knows what he's up to nowadays, feel free to tell me in the comments below. Honestly, I feel like Marc Davis was not given another chance to move forward with Gibbs after Memphis. He was just getting his feet wet for Joe Gibbs Racing's nationwide team. It's honestly a shame that his career didn't go further in general. I'm sure he would have some potential even with bumps on the road. But in the end, it just didn't work out. I honestly like that even when his days of racing for Joe Gibbs were over, Marc and his father, Harry, never gave up and made their own race team. Unfortunately, Marc would lose his father on January 21st, 2010. If it wasn't for the hard work for father and son, Marc would have ended his career at Memphis. In my opinion, thankfully, Marc's career lasted a couple of years longer. Even though Marc Davis hasn't done a lot in NASCAR, whether it's Joe Gibbs Racing's or other race teams, I feel like more fans should remember the time when Marc Davis raced for Joe Gibbs. Talk about an awkward time making this episode when Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota keeps losing their drivers left and right. But out of all the drivers who race for Gibbs, I believe Marc Davis is the most forgotten Joe Gibbs Racing developmental driver. I believe he should be remembered for his time and effort for the team. Marc would also be the last young black driver racing for Joe Gibbs in Nationwide and also a young Toyota Racing developmental driver until Bubba Wallace came along. So that is the end of Joe Gibbs Racing's forgotten developmental driver. I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Racing Stories. This is the Impressive 48, signing off. Goodbye, everybody.